Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am Paddocast. It is a monster of a first day of reveals for Riftbound Unleashed, the brand new set from Riot Games. And there's about 46 cards that are currently in the bank for Unleashed. Some of them have already been revealed, but a lot of them were revealed today through different videos, articles, all that kind of fun stuff. So if you missed it, if you wanted to go through and kind of get a breakdown of all the cards, where they kind of feel so far, or what they're revealing about the set, this is the video for you. And first off, let's talk about these brand new runes. I mean, these were previewed far in advance around Vegas at the regional qualifier, and these are just great. They feature all the kind of battlefields around the jungle in the map of Summoner's Rift. So this is Dragon Pit. You have the generic jungle. I think that might ever be by red. You have the Nexus, which is your main home. You have Gromp. This is actually Gromp himself, and it's branded into him for body, which I think is freaking amazing touch. Like brilliantly done, right? Like good stuff. This Chaos Rune is the Baron Nashor Pit, which we'll talk about. The Baron, and then Order being the turret that kind of keeps everything in check early on until they get taken out, and then beautifully, artistically, everything goes to Chaos once it's time for Baron. So with those out of the way, let's talk about the legends that have been revealed. First up, we have Lilia, the Bashful Bloom. She has 4 Exhaust Me, play and ready a 3-cost sprite unit token with temporary. This ability costs 1 less for each friendly unit with temporary. So basically, Lilia's deck that you want to build out a lot of sprite tokens, that kind of thing. A lot of stuff with temporary. There'll probably be other stuff within the set. And then you kind of rush down with these units, and then you kind of play probably more of a spell focus. I think that there's a lot of really cool tools for the Calm Mind archetype that are even coming from other legends in the set, but their champion units might be able to fill in nicely with the new ambush mechanic. I think that this is a solid, we'll see what support she gets, but a solid champion that you could run coming up, and like her a lot. Now we have Vex, the Gloomist. When you are an ally hold, you may exhaust me to draw 1. So again, hold not really valued as highly in the current meta of Riftbound because attacking is more powerful. It's really hard to hold. There's a lot of bounce spells, a lot of removal. It is really hard to hold. So having a mechanic that's tied to holding specifically means it's generally at least a little bit underpowered. However, what I would say is, especially with Vex, is that because she's in the chaos and she's in calm, she has a lot of counter spells. In fact, the most counter spells you possibly have. There's a new counter spell in this set. Uh, but you also have a lot of bounce and ways to play tricks to protect your battlefields, including Vex herself. So this could be one where you might be able to get off the holds and draw off of that, which I think is pretty nice. And I like they learned their lesson from Draven at least, and it is exhaust me, so you only get the one trigger of it. That would have helped with curbing Draven at least a little bit in his current iteration. Then we have a very interesting one in Ivern the Greenfather. So Ivern basically says when you conquer a hold, you may exhaust me to replace the battlefield with a bush battlefield token. And basically the token says bird, cat, dog, poro, and Ivern units get +1 might in the bush, and it can be swapped back out to the original battlefield once it is conquered. So this is actually really, really strong. It seems, it depends on what support it gets. However, what it looks like to me is, hey, whatever battlefield you were planning, which is a big part of deck construction, is battlefields. They're very important. Talking to a lot of the pros that were there, Ali Eldrazi said, hey, it's way more important than your sideboard. This is a very important part of your game planning for going into a tournament. Ivern, the ability to just shut that off and turn it in to essentially what is a Trifarian war camp, but only for the units that you're probably playing. They might be playing some too, or in the mirror match, it's kind of a whatever. But be able to turn off a battlefield is so good. So I think that could be a really good spoiler type of champion, someone that calm and order all the people that have been kind of waiting for a character to kind of be meta or be able to have a really good shot. I think that the Greenfather might be that champion for these colors, so those players can rejoice. Although I do recognize that a little bit, that again, it is calm and order legends haven't felt into like you can run anything with this. They're very focused on what you do. Leona's like, you're gonna stun a lot, and not that other legends don't do that, but something like Draven, where it's like, hey, you just draw a card for winning combat, that leads to lots of other things that you can kind of build decks around wide options. Where this is like, you're probably running birds, cats, dogs, poros, and Ivern, right? But we could see some really fun stuff out of it, because really it is just that bush ability is so strong. Next up, we have Diana, Scorn of the Moon. She has reaction, tap to add 1 energy. Spend this energy only during showdowns. I think this is good. It's a good card. Any legend that lets you cheat costs, that kind of stuff generally is going to be playable. I don't think she's super overpowered. And, compare it to, you might compare it to a Darius is going to ramp off of playing other things. She just gives you that extra energy in a combat to play a buff spell, play ambush character, which I think is going to be really big. And I like her colors. I like Diana as a champion. This is a deck that style that would be fun for me to play. So I think she goes in the solid tier. And then next up, we have LeBlanc the Deceiver. And she says, when you conquer or hold, you may discard one and exhaust me to play a ready reflection unit token there. It becomes a copy of another unit there. Give it temporary. So basically, you clone or copy a unit there for exhausting. Notably, with this, you will not get to do on play effects. You'll get death knells from it because it's temporary. It'll go away. So you get that bonus. But this ability is kind of crazy. Just to be able to double up the power of a unit after taking holding, to be able to do lots of death knell type trigger shenanigans and stuff like that. I think that this card could go crazy in a lot of ways and maybe unseat Victor as the main go-to calm and order legend. And I think, it's going to be, there's probably going to be a lot of kind of testing and unique things that come out of this legend that I feel like it's going to always be a dark horse at the very least to meta defining at the top end. So we will see where this falls because we'll get into their spells as well, but their spells are pretty good too. And then next up we have Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix says when you win a combat, gain 1 XP. Spend 1 XP, you can buff a unit, tap to buff. So you basically get Lee Sin's ability, or you can spend 2 XP to move an exhausted friendly unit from the battlefield back to its base. You kind of get a pseudo Lucian kind of effect where you conquer, take, spend the 2 XP, bring the unit back, and that kind of thing. So basically kind of combining two ideas of different legends, but tying it to this XP. And we'll talk about XP as we go through this. It's a new mechanic that's added in. Basically, there are units that have hunt, and unless you're Kha'Zix or whatever, they will create XP when they conquer or and such. And so that way you kind of build up this resource to use or spend or unlock abilities as you go along. Kha'Zix, of course, being body chaos, is in the prime colors for Aurora. I don't know if he is going to fall into that, but being able to buff up really big units, might be a little good. Being able to pull them back could also be good, but you're often holding an Aurora, so I don't think that will mainly be his playstyle. He's probably going to play a more aggro style deck and almost be kind of like a pseudo set type of play, is my guess. And then, of course, we have overnumbers just to look at these. These are beautiful. Ivan the Greenfather, love this art. Looks great. Diana, we have this more anime style type take on it with her slash, and I love the crescent of her hair. Nice touch there. And then we also have the Kha'Zix overnumbered, which this thing is pretty. I actually think it's better than the the default Kha'Zix. I always feel like the default Kha'Zix feels more like the interpretive art, and this just feels like really good Kha'Zix art. And I think this will be the one to have for the over as far as overnumbered to go. But that does it for the legends. Next up, we're going to actually head to the battlefields. So we have Baron Pit. Baron Pit says you can't start the game with the token battlefield, but basically Baron Pit says all units from anywhere, whether base, everybody is ganking to this battlefield. Basically, you can go there. And basically, Baron Pit is added when you play Baron Nashor, which we'll get into. But very, very interesting card with a lot of rules questions. But basically, adding a third battlefield is what Baron Nashor will do into a standard 2 battlefield game. There might be other token battlefields or ways to create them, but that'll also be interesting to see. And then we have Brush. So this is the Ivern battlefield that I mentioned earlier that he creates, where Bird, Cat, Dog, Poro, and Ivern units get +1 might. When you score here, you may place the battlefield. So basically just the mechanic for him. Next up, let's go to the units. So let's see what we have here for units. This is going to be quite the meteor type of dive in. So let's get into it. Inferna. Inferna is ambush. So ambush is new mechanics. So basically your units become a reaction spell. So think Rengar and Spirit Forge. Now all of them are kind of like that, where you can play them in. She has assault too. So reacting, she's basically a 2 energy bodied version of a cleave, sort of, where it's like you pay 2, you add the 1, and you assault. So she's going to, when you attack, you're going to add her in as a body that is a 3 might body. So it might be the little bit extra to break the battlefield but survive and be able to hold for the conqueror, hold the battlefield, is what she's going to do. But she's not really going to be used defensively, where I feel like most of ambush is centered. So I actually don't think she's that strong. but she is playable a little bit later into a game. I can see, because of the fact that you can just add on to a swing with her and add in the might immediately. So like, think of like if you had a 2 energy, 3 cost, a 3 might unit that you can just add in to a push. That's better than having something you're gonna have to develop, right? It'd be more expensive that way than just to have the two and swing in with something. So not the best, not the worst, especially that mechanic. But this guy is pretty good. So Jin, the Murderous Artist, he has deflect, he has ganking, he bakes cookies. Now, when I move, add 1 energy and 1 power. This is kind of insane. And if we're thinking about Draven or Fury Chaos type of decks that have movement mechanics, which ride the wind, like he's just going to give you a lot of extra oomph on top of all the reduction they have. It is going to make him a nightmare and a solid unit. He's 4 and 1 power though for 4, so that's not great. But the deflect, the ganking, and I think having the shenanigan trickery could be enough to make him a mainstay, to potentially make some decks, and be really really strong. Especially comboing, being able to move around and even use the energy that he's creating and the power he's creating to move him around. I think super super interesting. Also has his alt art here, which is a lot cleaner. Doesn't have the explanation text on there, but there's the alternate art. Next up, we have Vi Hot Headed. So Vi before was ended up being kind of more of a tech card, where she was 2 energy and a power, and she was low might, but basically you could cycle your deck, and she's been seen in a lot of the Detonate Draven decks that we've seen to be able to recur your deck and be that kind of tech. This Vi is kind of heading towards the same path of being a big unit, but it gets there a different way. It comes with built-in deflect, and then she also has pay 2 and a power, and you double my might this turn. You can pay that consistently. It's not once per turn. You can buffer with other stuff, stack it, so she can even reach heights, unless you're recycling your whole deck in the Detonate Draven style, she can reach heights that maybe even the other standard Vi is not going to hit as much often. Just as a base, if you look at it, she's going to jump to 6 off of the first result, and from 6 she is going to go to 12, and then from 12 she's going to go to 24. So you can see where it's like, as an all-in, she also has that potential, even though it does take resources. But if you have other ways to cheat, if you have other ways to pay it, if you have other ways to do those types of things, she might get there faster. So interesting unit to keep your eye on. She is 4 energy for 3 power those without the other part of it, not super super crazy stat wise. Next we have Mutated Mauser. So again, kind of we're seeing these kind of like these alternate 2 drops that take pieces from the other sets and just kind of add them into a smaller body. So this is a Mutated Mauser. So shield 2, so it can be 3 on the defensive versus Inferno, which is 3 on the attack, and then has tank, so it will tank up attacks, which I think tank is really slept on as a keyword, as an ability. It lets you do really strong things when you have priority units or protect the president units on a battlefield that you really want to protect and you're trying to hold. I think this card, you know, it's good for what it wants to do. If you need extra tank, it is a cheap, efficient option. It doesn't take battlefields very well, so that's where it really kind of hurts itself as an early drop. But if you control a battlefield or you have an open battlefield, you can take it with it, or you can drop it on as a supporting unit. Not too bad. Next up, we have Moss Stomper, which is 3 energy, 1 power for a 3 might unit. It has Hunt too, so this is the mechanic I was talking about, where if you go and you conquer or you hold, you get 2 XP. So if you conquer and then you hold, that's 4 XP. That ramps up really quickly. At level 3, it has +1 might and deflect. So I think that this is kind of the mechanic that you're seeing, where you are trying to generate XP through lots of different sources throughout your deck, and then hopefully get better stat units. Now, the issue with this though is it's basically saying, hey, at the max of what it's doing, besides being a generator to create XP, it's 3 energy, 1 power for a 4 might unit with deflect. And that's not like bad, but it's not like crazy. And without that, it's bad stat to cost ratio. And then you think you have to factor in that you have to get the XP off. And if you don't get the XP off, then it's not really good. And even with the XP, it itself is not great. So it really just has to be that combo package with the other XP cards to make it feel good, or to make those cards feel good. And I think that's where XP as a concept, that what we've seen so far, doesn't look as strong. However, I have to believe there's other stuff to ramp it up quickly, because as we'll get into later, there's a Master Yi card that requires a lot of XP to get going. And so I have to believe there's going to be like battlefields that give you XP. I have to believe there's going to be spells that can give you, there's going to have to be better ways to get chunks of XP. So we'll get into that as we get further. Right now, this card doesn't seem amazing to me. It feels like a requirement type card if you're going to try to use a XP leveling type strategy so far of what we see in this deck. Next, we have Lascila. Lascila? I don't actually know how that's going to be spelled. Basically, she's a giant siren lady. It looks like. So basically, when I hold at the start of your next main phase, you may move an enemy unit into this battlefield. So this is 7 energy, 1 power for a 6 might unit that basically can pull stuff in if you hold. I don't think this is super great. I think it's a good. Basically, this has to be played like in a control style deck. And the idea is that you have a big body that you go in, you can protect, and then you bring in their backlight stuff, their Ezreals, their stuff they're trying to hide, and you pick them off. My issue is it's again, hold strategies are very hard in this current meta that we have in the current card pool and that kind of thing. And so it's underpowered body for the costs that you have to then hold with, you have to conquer with or hold with. Maybe you already have a battlefield conquer, so it's another body that you throw on, but you basically have to hold with it there. And then on your next main phase, you bring something in. And then when you bring something in, you also probably have to hold up interaction because they could bounce their thing back. They could bounce your thing. They can buff it up potentially to kill you. And then they score a point on your turn. There's a lot of stuff with this idea that is so telegraphed and so underpowered that I don't think it's super great, but it definitely is like I think a tech card for something in the meta that you might come up with or interact with. And so for that, it might see play, but I'd say this is kind of low on the lower end of power scale for my initial take here and reaction. Now, mastery. This is the mastery you were talking about. So basically, he's 12 energy, 3 power for a 12 might unit, nothing else. And every level XP, level 3, level 6, level 11, you decrease that cost. So at level 11, he costs only 6 energy for a 12 might unit, fully reduced 6 energy and 3 power of the cost. My reaction to that is like looking at all the other cards to make this happen. That's far too long and far too mini game within a game that like it's gonna be fun for some people. And maybe they have really cool enabling cards, but this just screams to me as like this is a bad card. Like, because even if I like even in an Aurora deck, it's just raw might. It's raw might of 12 is good, but I'd rather play probably Volibear or something with like shield or something that effectively can be big and do other things, have deflect, other things like that. And right now, when I look at this unit, it's like, the best part about him is if you get to level 16, so you get 16 experience somehow through this game without winning, you he can't be chosen by enemy spells and abilities, which is good. Like that's really good. If you had a 12 might, can't be chosen by spells or abilities unit for 12 and 3 power, that seems pretty good. However, the problem with that is here's Chaos's version of that. It's 10 energy, it doesn't get the reduction, but it's 10 energy, 3 power for 12 might. The same thing. Can't be chosen by enemy spells abilities off the bat. Creates a separate battlefield that it goes to and pretty much automatically conquers because it can't be chosen. So you're not bouncing or doing any of that stuff. And then other friendly units all over the board get +2. So he basically becomes a better Master Yi, but his name is Baron Nashor. Like, like this is the comparison. I'm looking at this card. I'm like, there's so many steps to get this card to something that's like, oh, okay, yeah. And then you just like, boom, I am him. Like, like so yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting take on a card. So could be extreme value, but again, all has to do with how fast you can rack up XP. Maybe there's like a spell that's like pay 1, get an XP or 2 XP or 3 XP. And you can rack this up really quickly. You can repeat it something along with the conquering. This ramps up way faster than I'm thinking, and this becomes a very efficient unit. And we'll have to see the Master Yi himself. But right now, this just looks like a lot of work when this is just so much more effective. Not the same colors, but yeah. Now, Vioma. Vioma has ambush, so it can appear in a battlefield. 8 energy, 2 power for 8 might. And enemy units here with less might than me don't deal combat damage when I hold, draw 1. But this card is gas because this card is basically a super defensive kind of trump card. And the fact that you can send it to a battlefield, they came in with a bunch of weenies or anything that's 7 might. They could have like 10 7 might units, but if you drop Vioma, they have nothing. So I think that this is a card that is going to be super interesting from that standpoint of like a very big surprise card. Now it is very expensive to be a very big surprise card, but that effect is something to fear that if this kind of makes it in as like a tech card at any stage or level, then and it also it's might scales, right? So enemy units here with less might than me don't deal combat damage. So that doesn't stop me from also buffing Vile Maw when I play it in some way or fashion or form, or having other stuff that does so. And then now Vioma is like is squashing even like other big, even bigger units. I think this is a scary card to be lurking in someone's hand, and we'll see if it makes some decks. It is in calm, so we'll see if that kind of fills any of the spots. But I think it is a very cool card. Next up, we have Gem Hunters. This is another XP enabler. It has Hunt 1, so it gives you 1 XP when it conquers. At level 6, it has +1 Might, so it becomes a 3 Might unit. So this is something that kind of scales a little bit in the later game. It gets 1 more Might, so it's a 2 for 3, and it gives you XP. So this is kind of like if you're running that XP style, if you're running the new Master Yi, then you're probably running Gem Hand Hunter as your 2-drop and using it in that capacity. Next up, we have Crowd Favorites. So this is a 3 energy, 3 cost unit that you have Hunt for. So you get 1 XP and you can spend 2 XP to buff it basically on your turn at any time at, turn speed basically. So not action, not reaction, but turn speed. Again, this is another card that feels not great. So there are other cards that around this cost, for this cost, less than this cost will get buffed or buff themselves or buff other units or give you the +1 without having to spend an external resource. The cost probably is partly because it wants to conquer and it can give you that XP. So that's why it is what it is. Like it's kind of built into that XP package. But I think unless XP levels are permanent and XP resource you can spend, like I don't necessarily know how that works. But like if I'm spending XP in a world where I want to build up XP to buff my stuff just for a buff, that doesn't sound good to me in my head. Like again, like I have to play test all this stuff, but like I'm not really sold off the bat on this card. So we move on. Nidalee. So Nidalee is 3 energy and a power for a 4 Might ambush unit. So again, you can play it as a reaction. It says when I win combat, draw a card. So this is kind of that surprise card that can draw you a card. I think this card's pretty good. Again, 4 Might for 3 and a power is not like crazy good, but the fact that it has ambush and it can draw you a card in the right scenarios sounds good to me. And the other key thing is she has to remain after you win combat, so she has to survive whatever she's going into. But I think that she could be an interesting card, to, at least in that sense of being able to draw your card, or she's going to tank for you because they're going to want to remove her in order to have her die with combat. Next up, we have Rengar. Rengar is 5 energy, 1 power for 6 Might unit. Again, has ambush and says I can be played to a battlefield where there are enemy units, even if you don't have units there. So Rengar, so normally ambush is basically you may play me to reaction to a battlefield that you have units, and this Rengar says like no one could be there. I'm just surprised. I'm a cat and I'm there. So this is interesting to be able to move it around to any battlefield, catch someone unaware. I think is pretty cool. I also think it leads to a lot of scenarios similar to what Ride the Wind did, where it's like, okay, I'm going to move in on some battlefield, and while your other battlefield's being held by like a twofer or something like that, you in response you Rengar and jump over there, take the battlefield score point on their turn, hold, get 2 points functionally. That could be a thing that comes into play that's pretty good. So I can see a lot of uses for Rengar because of that specialty to play to any battlefield. And then if you have a third battlefield from Baron Nashor, then that could be in play somehow, depending on how the game state is going. So interesting card. It does have an alt art as well. We talked about Baron Nashor. Baron Nashor was one of the first revealed cards, very highly teased. This card is just really strong. Single-handedly spiked Aurora as a card on the market up to about $100-ish plus dollars, that kind of stuff. Now it's come back down a little bit after your initial crazy hype, but I think that this is a strong card, and I think creating a third battlefield adds a lot of fun things. Being able to give other friendly units +2 and not being able to be targeted just as strong. Now, a lot of people have made jokes that there's, I can Imperial Decree and, I can, use any number of the billion yellow tactics to try to kill this thing without targeting it. But the issue with that is that, you play this, you probably have other units on the board. You probably have some other backing. It's probably not the only unit that's not going to get called the week, that kind of stuff. Baron 8 weak, that's what I'm saying. So like, but Imperial Decree definitely could be on the table as a response to this, and probably will make yellow a little bit stronger if this is ever a mainstay in the current meta. A card that could warp the meta, but also might not. It might just be too much and might not be as effective. Now, everyone's speculated, because in this picture of Baron Nashor, Ashe is down here in the bottom right. The Ashe would be in the set, and they were correct. Not as a legend, I believe. I don't think she'll be a legend because she's just not a jungle champion. Same with Jin. Jin's in a lot of the cards. I don't think Jin will be a legend in this, but Jin definitely seems to fit a Vendetta theme, so maybe he'll make it from there. But Ash, basically, I was wondering what they would do with the mechanics with Ash as far as like holding down units or freezing units or stunning units or that kind of stuff, or like what kind of mechanic they would do. And this is kind of where they land on. You can kind of see the design lines here. The 5 energy and a power for 4 might, not good cost to stat ratio, but her ability says when you play me, choose an opponent, they reveal their hand, you choose a card reveal this way, you banish it from the game, and then when they hold, return it to their hand. So it's interesting in the fact that like you go and you banish something, but if they ever hold, which again, as we've talked about a lot, I mentioned many times, harder in the current meta or in Riftbound, like they may not be able to do that to begin with, but the fact that they can just hold to kind of get it back also is kind of like, like you have to have a scenario where you can clear the battlefields or control the battlefields before you even play this, because if you play this and pass a turn, there's anything, they immediately get it back, right? So you have to have a board state where they do not have control or impending control, or you can clear the control for sure before this actually becomes effective. Because it's cool that if it's a mind splitter or if they're low on cards or stuff like that, being able to meet mind splitter is a really crazy strong card, and it costs 7 though in power. And so this being able to cost 5 in power, you can get this out a lot earlier and disrupt their hand, and you can pick anything, which is also very very strong. I think this could be like anywhere from like, hey, this will be a defining answer to something in the meta or a sideboard card, to like this could just be bad because the scenarios where, the awkward scenarios where you can't really use it and get an effect, where you're just like pulling it out on your turn and that's it, and they're going to get it immediately back when they hold, like it, like that could be a thing. So it'll be interesting to see where this card kind of falls. Not overstated for sure. Ability we know is strong, but it's just a matter of like the fact that they can get it back is the scary part here. And next up is Atakan, the new cool boy in the lore that we've been following along with now with Xin Zhao and that kind of stuff. So Atakan says, you may kill a friendly unit as an additional cost to play me. If you do, it costs 1 less for each energy it costs, and power less for each power it costs. So basically, you pick something, the more expensive it is, the cheaper Atakan is. But base, he's 10 energy, 3 power for a 7 might unit. He has ganking, which means he can go anywhere, but he does have a very important thing, which is when I attack, the defender must kill one of their units here. So wherever he's attacking, if there's a unit there, he's killing it. So he can't kill stuff in your base. He's not like a roaming cull, if you will, but he is for anything at that location, which is a strong ability. It's a closer ability to close out battlefields. Not really great into if there's any sort of weenie strategy or aggro strategy, but as far as anything that wants to hold with big stuff like an Aurora deck or someone playing Baron Nashor, for example, and there's only Baron Nashor his there, he basically says, "Hey, oh yeah, kill that unit, kill it now." So he is a direct answer to Baron Nashor, pretty much if there's nothing else there, or they don't move any other units there. And he is telegraphed. So if you have a way to accelerate him or move him, I'm thinking, obviously if you have an Order Chaos champion in a future set, you'll have a lot of movement shenanigans. But otherwise, I'm probably thinking you need like a yellow red, maybe you bushwhack, or you need a order body, that you could ready that way. Like there's a lot of different ways that you could ready have a readied Otacon that you send in. Um, and then that way he's going to be way more threatening than when he comes in and telegraphs his play. And then last off, we have in this unit we have some tokens. We have Bird. So Bird is just like a 1 might deflect unit. That seems strong to me as far as what as deflecting is. And this is the reflection ability of LeBlanc, as you can see right here. Basically, you can just as a token that becomes a copy. I think the tough part about the LeBlanc decks, as far as like messiness goes in play state, is going to be trying to make sure that like what unit this is, because a generic token being a unit, like it's almost like this is actually, this might be where like the Rift Buds tokens, maybe we checked out my Rift Buds video, like having a bunch of tokens or things for common stuff that you might copy will be really helpful here, that you could like stack it on top of it to show like, hey, this is the reflection and here's like what it's copying, so that if you copy a unit that's in play and that unit disappears and you just have a reflection token on, that it's clear what the game state is, what that is, what its might and power is, etc. I think that's pretty important. So we'll see. I feel like it'll be very important for LeBlanc players to provide that and have that for themselves when they are playing that deck. All right, so now that we have finished the units, we've finished some yapping. let's move on to our gear. So gear, we only have one. We have Frigid Jewel. It says when you draw your second card each turn, give a friendly unit +2 this turn. So this is just a passive card that you put out there. And then when you're drawing a bunch of cards through spells, which there are some new draw spells or other cards that you might have from the other colors in your deck or units, you can start to trigger this and you can add +2 to a unit for your turn. Just adds a little bit more might and allows you to take things. So again, this won't be useful for holding and that kind of stuff. Um, Oh, it says each turn. So actually, yeah. So during your opponent's turn, you could trigger this if you have a spell that draws to buff a unit on a defense, which actually could be pretty good. That actually makes this a little bit better than maybe at first glance. In my quick look at this, I was gut checking to see, because then it basically says if you have a lot of draw or capacity draw, you have a consult the pass. It turns consult the pass into draw two, give a unit +2. So it's interesting. I don't know if it's good yet, but it's an interesting card that can be played, especially with how prevalent draws being. And then let's look at the spells. So spells, we have Upstage Comedy, which is 2 energy spell that has repeat. It says ready a unit, and so you can ready up to 2 units with it for 4, or just ready 1 unit for 2. This seems okay. It's on a blanket ready all units to get played, but it does ready stuff in play, so you can do lots of shenanigans with, a ganking unit can conquer. You could activate a Vi from Origins with that she has ganking built in, so you could activate her to go over and gank and that kind of stuff. That seems pretty good to me, shenanigans. Or you could do the take and pull back strategy. This card just seems like a good toolkit kind of card. Dancing Great now. This is a fun, interesting, almost party favors esque little jaunt. So you pay 2 in a power, you deal 2 to a unit, and then that unit's controller can pay 1 power. And if they do, this deals 1 additional bonus damage for each time that spell has dealt damage this turn. So basically, you can send it back and forth at each other. So it's like a doom loop where when you cast this, it's going to do the damage, but then they have the opportunity to send it back to you with +1 damage. And then I assume you can just keep going, which would be pretty insane, because eventually you could just both destroy your own boards if you want to spend enough energy to do so. I don't know if you want to. I don't know if people will be crazy enough that you might just not want to play this card, because there's stuff that does better damage stats basically. So yeah, very interesting card, very fun card. I like this card. This is a multiplayer card at the very least for sure. That would be super fun. I'm gonna play with my friends, but I don't know if it makes competitive decks based on everything else that's out there that you can pay for similar cost or less cost to for sure remove a threat instead of create a chaos scenario. So we'll see. I mean, again, anything with Ezreal could also pay the optional cost and reduce it, and then get free sendbacks, which will mean that you won't send back. But I think that at its base, and a power for 2 to a unit isn't super great. So yeah. Unless I'm reading this wrong, unless I'm reading this that you, the caster, get to do it, because it seems more like deal 2 to a unit, and then it sounds like the unit's controller gets to pay this. This is how I interpret it, but if I'm wrong, then this definitely has a different feel. Yeah. But if you have multiple of these, the interesting part is that this last clause that if they do, this deals 1 additional bonus damage for each time the spell has been damaged this turn. You know, you can cast multiple of these and they will stack up. All right. So downstage dramatics. So this is 2 to draw a card. You can repeat for 2. It's reaction speed. Again, this is another draw card. Again, goes with the gear that we just went over to buff stuff. You're paying for a consult the pass basically, or you can pay half to have a half consult the pass. That's kind of where this falls. If you have other things that reduce the cost of spells, there's a lot of those in blue, purple, that kind of stuff, then this can get even better as a draw kind of mechanic. Again, just another flavor of draw that's been added to the set. Now, this one is a controversial. We're the power creep is creeping right now. The power creep is creeping with these new cards. So, Abandoned is 2 energy. Of course, it's a chaos card. That's a reaction. It says counter spell, return it to its owner's hand instead of putting it in the trash. And if that wasn't good enough, there's to like for purple to have another counter spell that has no restrictions, basically just puts it back in their hand. So I cast Time Warp, oh, put the Time Warp back in your hand. Well, like, I don't care that it went back in your hand. I functionally countered it. You're not gonna, I know that you have it, you could cast it on another turn, but the tempo of doing that for 2 energy is so good, along with the cheating ability. But on top of all that, it also has predict, so it lets you basically scry the top of your deck, or vision for units. What vision for units would be, where you look at the top of the main deck and you can recycle it, or you can keep it on top. And I think that just makes me, like I I don't think Chaos needed this, but again, I know these sets are planned far in advance, so the reaction to what currently is kind of like this is just more gas that you're throwing on the already bonfire of Chaos being such a strong tempo merchant with all the bounce spells, all the push move spells, all that kind of thing. That this thematic just in general within the way the game plays and core mechanics, it's just always going to be powerful. And creeping counter spells into another color with like hard bargain, I felt like was like okay, but they can pay a cost to keep it. And this not having any way to pay a cost to keep it just goes back to your hand, which does feel thematically chaos, but to me also feels like this is a tool they don't need. They already have so many tools, and this is just another uncommon common card that to add to the list of uncommon and common cards. It's gonna be a pain to deal with. Next up, we have Lilting Lullaby. So this is 2 energy, 2 power, reaction speed. This is Lilia's signature spell, which says counter a spell. His controller can't play spells this turn. So basically, like a kind of Brynir, like kind of like pseudo Brynir, because it's just a spells, it's not cards, but it's counter spell and they can't play another spell. So it kind of shuts down purple shenanigans in a way, unless they abandon it and then you don't have enough to repay and play it. I guess I don't know. Like that sucks, but it kind of sounds like it could be really strong for that to stop all like the college shotting and whatnot. This is a good if you play Lilia, you're probably playing 1 to 2 of these. This is a solid signature spell. It's a good signature spell. Definitely something that I would take if I could take it in an RE deck or anything in the kind of Calm Mind. But yeah, definitely a solid signature spell, which I'd love to see. I'd love to see when signature spells are played, because I feel like from Origins, a lot of them kind of got waylaid or like weren't quite powerful enough. In Spirit Force, they started strong and then people slowly kind of filtered them out again, except for very specific cases. And then now, like they were like much stronger, way better. But now it's like it looks like so far the first 2 that we see off the bat are like okay, it's probably going in the deck. And then next up, we have Mirror Image. Mirror Image is 3 energy, 2 power. Choose a unit, play a ready reflection unit token to your base. It becomes a copy of that unit. Give it temporary, kill at the start of its controller's beginning phase before scoring. The best lies are beautiful, LeBlanc. So this again, this spell is I feel like is a very high power spell. The fact that you just choose a unit, so it's not like the legend ability where it's a unit that's at the battlefield that you conquer or whatever. This is you choose a unit, so from anywhere, and even your enemy's units, and you play it ready. So, if those units have a death knell, if those units have a passive ability, you get that no matter what color, what ability, what card it is, and then it's ready. So at the very worst, without other buffs in play, without defensive buffs or other stuff like that, like you just trade 1 for 1 because it's so cheap. And like 3 for 2 power is pretty cheap to get any unit on the battlefield. Like the opportunity and potential of this is very, very strong, even though it is temporary. So this card is definitely a card to watch. I think this Abandon and Lilting Lullaby, definitely huge signature spells. LeBlanc's signature spell, a banger. Lily's signature spell, very good. So yeah, that I think wraps up all of our previews for day 1 and everything that's been revealed so far. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite card of this set so far is, what you're excited to come out. Do you think XP is going to be a good mechanic, or is it kind of dead on arrival? Are you wait and see? Where do you fall and all that kind of stuff? And I'll just be bringing you more releases and updates as we go along. But remember, you're going to be amazing today because you are amazing. I'll catch you next episode.